All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Trip Killen. I'm the executive director of the Genium Foundation, a small family foundation based in Newtown, Connecticut, and the unofficial sort of chairperson of the Long Island Sound Funders Collaborative. And it's that collaborative that has come together to make the Stewardship Fund as a grant opportunity for the last several years. And we're here to talk about the 2025 request for proposals that was recently released. And it's going to be a fairly short, straightforward, and hopefully informative webinar. You all have the ability to ask some questions that I will try to cover both as we go along, and there'll also be some time for specific questions at the end. So feel free to type those in, and we'll either handle them or while the presentation's going on or at the end. I'm joined, and the host officially is Melissa Greenberg from the New York Community Trust Long Island Sound Office. And she is going to be here and walk us a little bit through the website that they have at New York Community Trust to make sure everybody can find the RFP. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and just get started. So with that, I'll say welcome and move on to the first things that we want to talk about, which is a description of sort of how the day is going to go, or this next hour or so. One, we're going to give an overview of who the funders are that are making this money available, and the funding itself and what it's for. We're going to talk some details about what the timelines are and what the dollar amounts are, who's eligible, and all those things. Then we'll take a look at the website and get some details on how to find it. We'll also provide the link to you. We provided it in the information that we did as well. And so what we'll do is make sure that you know how to find that on the internets. And then finally, we'll start going through a couple of the main priority areas for the RFP and talking a little bit more detail about what it is we're looking for. We'll give some tips, we'll give some examples, and hopefully that will help you think about the type of proposal you might want to bring in. And then at the very end, as I said, we'll have lots of times for questions and examples and all that kind of stuff. So without much further ado, we'll jump into who the Long Island Sound Funders Collaborative are and who's contributed to this. So the Funders Collaborative is larger than this group, but these are some of the funders who have given money to the Stewardship Fund. We pooled our money together. Now, in all these instances, all these foundations don't work solely on the Long Island Sound and working to improve it. What we do is we collaborate together so that we can maybe look at projects and do projects that are bigger than any of us can do on our own. And that's the goal of the Stewardship Fund, is for each of us who have a part of our program is in that area, to be able to give you guys or access to the resources that you need to move things along. Many of you might be grantees of one or more of these foundations through different programs, but the Stewardship Fund is a standalone pile of money that we've put together to hopefully move things forward around Long Island Sound. The essentials of what we're doing with this RFP, it starts off with one big rule. We're trying to find ways to support the comprehensive conservation and management plan that has been put out by the Long Island Sound Study, formerly now going to be called the Long Island Sound Partnership. And that partnership is robust, and it's been around for decades, and there's lots of groups involved in it, and they've gone through a lot of effort to sort of talk about these are the things that we'd like to get done. And so our Stewardship Fund is designed to help projects that are aligned with that. The priority areas that we try to focus on are capacity building, new collaboration, and piloting tools and planning. And so we'll talk about those in a lot of detail a little bit later, but those are our priority areas, and you'll fall into one and only one of those. And then we have a number of cross-cutting principles, which are taken from the Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan that could apply to any of these things. One or more of them might apply to any of the priorities, and those are resilience to climate change, sustainability, and environmental justice. So the first sort of pro tips is that it's going to be very important that you read the RFP and understand what we're looking for in these different priority areas, and then what these cross-cutting principles might be and how they would fit into these different priorities. And then the main pro tip is pick one and only one of the priorities. A lot of times you could say, oh, my project could be this or it could be that. Pick only one, because you're going to need to, one, be in that review team's bucket. So if you don't pick one properly, we're going to pick it for you. And if you try to make it say, oh, it's really about all three priorities, it's just going to sound muddled to the review team. So it's very important that you focus in your ask on one of my priorities. So yes, so great. We got our first question is about how to get a recording, and Melissa's typing in the answer. So we'll move on with that. The timelines for this proposal just released last week. It's the groups that are eligible are 501c3 nonprofits. So you have to be one of those, or you have to have a fiscal sponsor that is one of those and can provide you with that C3. And that's because everybody who gives to the Stewardship Fund is a foundation or close enough to it that they need to make sure that they're giving for charitable purposes. So we use that. The total amount in the fund, and this is important to reflect on relative to, say, the Futures Fund, which just announced $12.2 million in grants last Friday. We're going to have only about $500,000 totally available, but it's all or mostly private philanthropic dollars. So we can do some things that other groups can't, and that Futures Fund can't, and government sources of funding can't do. The grants are going to range from $15,000 up to $200,000. And we'll talk a little bit more about what it's going to take to be on the upper end of that range later. Applications are due on Thursday, January 30th, 2025, before 5 p.m. So you've got about 6 weeks with the holiday, 7 maybe. It's not a ton of turnaround time, but the proposal process should be fairly straightforward. We tried to make it as easy as we can while still collecting the data that we need to be able to make our decisions. Answers are generally given, I hope, very early in April, but because of the process on the back end of getting everybody involved and then doing the vetting of final things and getting checks out, usually we see that people receive their answers and their information in April. So think about that timeline, especially as you start to look at your project length. So for any grant request that's less than $100,000, we would expect you to start within 3 months of the grant award and be completed within 15 months total time. So if you're finding out in April, plan to be started by the end of the summer. At the latest, you can start earlier, but certainly expect the whole project cycle to be done 15 months from then. As a hard end. Something that's larger than that, over $100,000, you can, we'd like you to expect to start in that same thing, but you get full 24 months to sort of look at the projects. We understand bigger projects take longer time to pull together. And then each organization can only put in 2 proposals. That being said, you might be a sub-awardee on somebody else's proposal, and that doesn't count against your maximum. So you might want to do a capacity proposal, and you might want to do a piloting proposal. Or you might be doing a capacity proposal and a piloting proposal. You can still be a sub-awardee on a new collaboration proposal. And we'll talk about more of that detail later. This is where you're going to go. So grant seeker at the newyorktrust.org home, 3 choices. And this is what that little website looks like. And I've circled the portion down here where you're going to go, where you can download the instructions. It's a PDF of everything that we're going to be asking for and talking about today. And then the apply button, which takes you into the portal to do those applications. And so what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Melissa for her to walk you through where to go on their website.
Great, thank you. So, you're going to go to our main homepage. I can bring it up for you quickly, which is the nytrust.org. And I thought I had it open, but for some reason it's not here. So I'm going to try it again. There we go. All right, hopefully you all can see this. So it's the nytrust.org is our homepage. And you can get to the page several different ways. So if you just wanted to find information about the Long Island Sound Stewardship Fund, you can either put it in the search bar and type Long Island Sound Stewardship. It's going to work for me. And then you'll see under here, collaborative funds, and it'll bring you to this page. You can read information about the collaborative, and here's the information about the funding opportunity for 2025. So it tells you that you need to apply through the grants seeker portal. And you can click on that link and it will take you directly to the grant seeker portal. Now you need to scroll down, as Trip just showed you that screenshot. You need to scroll down to additional requests for proposals. And then you'll see Long Island Sound Stewardship Fund 2025. Here's your application deadline, 5 o'clock on January 30th. You can click on download instructions, which you want to make sure you do before you put together your proposal. So I've already downloaded this. It's quite lengthy. It has the RFP, the overview, tells you a little bit about the collaborative, the different categories that you could pick from. So you're going to select one, as Trip said. It's either going to be capacity building, new collaboratives, or piloting and planning. We talk about the size of the awards, who can apply, the grant period. You'll find everything you need to know here. Then there's another document attached to it as well. These are your instructions as to how to apply. So you want to pay careful attention as to what you need to collect and put together in one PDF. Here's all the information, the timeline. If you have any questions, you'll reach out to the trust. Then there's a narrative outline. So again, you want to make sure that you carefully follow all the instructions in here and include this in your proposal. It talks about how we'll score it. The expense budget form can also be found in this same PDF file. So you'll want to print this, fill it out, and then upload it with your one single PDF. We have a frequently asked questions document attached here as well. And then again, it tells you if you have other questions, where to contact. So that's the actual RFP. Going back to here. So once you have all your instructions, you put together that single PDF, you would then click on apply, and it'll take you to the cover sheet. Really important, you want to make sure that you see this, that you're submitting the cover sheet for the Long Island Sound Stewardship Fund 2025 RFP. There are a lot of different proposals that you can be submitting in this portal. And so if you submit to the wrong place, it's not going to get to us for review. So make sure that you're seeing this cover sheet specific to this RFP. You'll fill out this form. At the end of it, right, you're going to put in the information about your project, a short description of it, where the project's taking place. And then here's where you'll upload that single PDF with the narrative, the budget forms, any letters of support, or anything else that's in the instructions. So you'll upload the one PDF. You have to make sure that it's no more than 25 megabytes in size. And then you'll certify that the information you provided is true. Once you submit it, so you'd submit request now, you'll get a PDF of the cover sheet. If for some reason you don't get confirmation, it means that we don't have it in the portal. Something went wrong. So if you submit and you don't get something, immediately reach out to us. And therefore, I would say do not wait until 4:55 p.m. on January 30th to do this, because if something goes awry, you might not be able to get in touch with somebody at the trust within those 5 minutes to get it in on time. So please, please keep that in mind. Leave yourself a little bit of time to make sure that, you know, everything gets uploaded. Once you start a cover sheet, you can save it for later and continue if you're not done with your PDF. And then you would hit this button. It'll give you an ID number, and you'd be able to get back into the portal to finish it. So that is an option available to you. Just going back into the homepage again once more. So there are other ways to find it. If you don't do it as a search that way, you can go to info for nonprofits. So info for nonprofits. And here you'd go under additional funding opportunities. And that's where you're going to find or collaborative funds, right? So here you'll see funder collaboratives. As Trip said, this is a funder collaborative. You would click here, scroll down, and you will see as an option Long Island Sound Stewardship Fund. We'll take you back to that page. You hit learn more, and you'll be back to where I started after I did the initial search. So you'd come back to here and can click back to the portal. It is a little bit, lots of clicks sometimes, and it's easy for people to get lost. So take a little time to familiarize yourself with it. So again, you're not waiting until the last minute to apply and then you can't figure out where you're going and what you're doing. If you do have questions, you can feel free to reach out to me, to Jeannie at the Trust, to Trip. Anyone would be able to get you in the right direction and help you move that along. So I will stop sharing that. I don't know if there are any questions.
Great.
I don't see anything in Q&A, but I'll turn it back
Yep.
to you.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and jump back to my presentation. And I want to do the slideshow. All right. And so we'll move on. What we're going to talk about next is the various priorities that we're going to cover that the RFP is talking about. We wanted to get in some more detail there to provide some clarity, because as we said, it's sort of like the one big choice that you need to make as you're writing your narratives. So capacity building is our first one. And while, obviously there's nothing in the CCMP that says, we need to build capacity at these organizations, we as funders realize that's a part. And so this is one where you could say, we do our work on this stuff and we need additional capacity. So what are the things that we're talking about? Capacity building is improvement in sort of like how you're delivering your programs or the scale at which you're delivering your programs. It could be planning for strategic planning for your organization. It could be, development work that you're doing with your board or training for staff. It could be software. It could be a lot of different things that at the end of the day, you can say, if we do this, then we will have a stronger organization. And because our organization works on the issues of the CCMP, that's how we fit into this. A couple of sort of caveats and clarifications. General capacity building is just not general support, right? It's not sort of a, if we had more money, we'd have more capacity, right? Or we would like the capacity not to fail to make payroll next month. So could you please give us $15,000? Those are not the things that we're looking for. And they're not also significant capital improvements. Yes, there's a role for this sort of infrastructure, but we're not buying buildings and we're not, looking at major sort of renovations of spaces and stuff like that, primarily because we just don't have enough funds to be able to do projects at that level. And those are larger, longer term things. So we're not going to, for instance, say we'll make a donation to a capital campaign, even though you're just asking us for a small amount. We're not looking to do that thing. Something specific that is about increasing the efficacy of your organization. Examples that we've had over the last several years. In 2023, the Hutchinson River Restoration Project wanted to hire part-time program staff and some accounting services. This was an organization that was really looking to move from an all-volunteer organization to get some boots on the ground to do some things, and especially around the accounting services, as they realized they needed to get their financial house in order. And so we were interested in that, and so we did it. Last year, two good ones, Guardians of Flushing Bay. I believe we have some folks on the phone on the webinar here for today. Got a finance and development coordinator, to somebody to work on their bookkeeping and help them do better fundraising. And so that was an important project we thought we could do. And then also Friends of the Bay got a volunteer coordinator and volunteer software. So it was both a software purchase and a staffing support. Now, in all these, I didn't put it down as a pro tip, but I'll give it to you anyway, which is if you're looking to get money for capacity building that is going to represent an ongoing expense to your organization, try to make some claim about how you're going to pay for that moving forward. So for instance, in the case of the Guardians of Flushing Bay and the Friends of the Bay things, these were both instances where new staff was being brought on that was about trying to maintain and expand relationships and affinity with donors. And so the expectation and the hope is that this new capacity at the organization will result in larger funding down the road. So that's something we want. So if it's more than just a one-time cost, like the first year of subscription on software or whatever happens to be, then we need to, it's going to be to your benefit to sort of say, this is how we're going to pay for it moving forward. Okay. Not seeing any questions on that, but we'll take plenty at the end. New collaboration. So this is about working with other organizations in new ways, right? Or for the first time. So you might not have worked with a particular group before, but your missions have overlapped and you guys see a project and you want to go and sort of work on that together. Or people that you've known for a really long time have decided to come together around a particular issue or mission, a development that's going up, or a plan that's in place that you guys are in opposition to, or whatever. This could be new coalitions or communication methods or tools or software or training or deliverables, any of the things that would be useful to a collaboration. It can be any of those items. What it's not is finally getting paid for all those meetings you attend for the collaboration you're already doing. So we understand there's a lot of it out there and it's not optimal. And we wish you were getting paid for all the meetings that you go to and collaborate with, but that's not what we're trying to fund. So a proposal that says, hey, we've been meeting with these town people and this other local group and working on this stuff for 10 years, and we'd really like to get paid for it now. That is not going to be a new collaboration. But it might be we want to take it to a new level and we're going to do a new way, or we want to bring in some new software and everybody's going to have to use it. That could be. So the pro tip here is that collaboration proposals can oftentimes be very weak, where people say, I want to hire a new staff person who's going to go out and collaborate with these 16 other organizations. But those other 16 organizations received exactly zero capacity to go out and be able to do those coordinations. So that's not a new collaboration effort. You could maybe make that argument that it's a capacity building thing, but if you're looking at new collaboration, try to make sure that everybody who's collaborating is going to get paid. That is going to make a big difference in the quality of your proposal, or how well it stacks up and is scored as we move forward. So, but if you're asking for new collaboration money and you're the only one getting paid, it doesn't. It's not a good fit. Some new examples. So Save the Sound got $200,000 back in 2022 to establish the Long Island Sound River Restoration Network, which included the Housatonic Valley Association, the Farmington River Watershed Association, the Connecticut River Conservancy, American Rivers, and Trout Unlimited. And everybody in that proposal by Save the Sound was a sub-awardee, and we're getting money to do the work of setting up this river restoration network. And importantly and excitingly, and as an example of what we're trying to accomplish with the Stewardship Fund, the River Restoration Network just received a Futures Fund grant last Friday for $500,000 and are working on future submissions as well about where to take this collaboration in the future. And so we were able to help start and make sure that that was a productive and meaningful set of discussions over the last couple of years and lift them up to these new funding sources. So, and then at a smaller level, the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District got one to facilitate the new collaboration around Anguilla Brook and with Cush and the Avalonia Land Conservancy. Cush is our conserving our streams and harbors. I can't remember exactly, but sounds and harbors. And so that was a good little grant. It doesn't have to be ginormous, right? That being said, so the big money in our proposals, and excuse me, in this RFP is going to tend to be for these larger new collaborations. That doesn't mean that we can't do big proposals and piloting or whatever thing like that. But generally, when you have a lot of people getting paid, that makes your proposal larger. And then we have piloting tools and planning. So this is a slight change from previous years. We used to call it piloting tools and strategies. The reality of the situation, this is the only place that a lot of the planning types of proposals could fit. So we decided to just own up to that and be a little bit more clear. We're looking with this priority to advance new tools and techniques, but also to help you get the information that you might need either to apply for or qualify for a larger funding source, or to get some preliminary answers done in some sort of testing regime or something along those lines. So it is a sort of new mousetrap. It's new ways of communicating, solving stuff. It could be preliminary work for a new grant or the first step in a long process that involves any of those. Like we got to do a feasibility study, or we've got to do a soil study, or something along those lines can be a good fit here, as long as you're telling that story of, if we do this, then we can do that, right? It is not, as some people have tried to sort of say, the first time you're using a proven technology is not necessarily piloting something, right? So when you say, oh, we don't have a website and we'd like a new website, so we would like to pilot website technology at our organization as a way to reach out to people. And it's sort of like, that's, that's well known what websites do. There's not learning anything from that. But we are interested in moving on that. A new website might be a capacity building issue, and you can find one for less than $100,000. Congratulations. And a van, for instance, would be like, we're going to pilot delivering in this vehicle as opposed to delivering the way that we used to. That's not what we're looking for here. That would be, again, either a capacity issue, or if you're using it in concert for the first time with other groups, might be new collaboration. But piloting is going to almost always involve some sort of evaluation and uncertainty. Once we have that, we are going to move forward, but we can't until we know. Is a good thing that you should ask yourself if you're going to look at this category.
Trip, I also just want to add that this is not about research projects. So
Yes.
Long Island Town Stewardship Fund doesn't fund research projects. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah, and we make that clear in the larger RFP, but that's an excellent point, right? So research projects is not the what we're looking for. This is on the ground stuff, even if there might be a component of we're not sure what's going to happen and we're going to measure results. Okay. Some examples. So we did SUNY Maritime to, try a new program on their on and model of bringing students out onto their new boat back in 2023. The Henry Ferguson Museum got $27,000 last year to pilot eco moorings, these ways of having boats moor without damaging the eelgrass beds at the area. And then the Alewife Cove Conservancy got some money to do sediment testing, development and implementation. So they needed to develop a sediment testing process, and then they needed to implement that. And the goal is that that is going to give them enough oomph to go and get, hopefully, depending on what the soil sample results are, apply for larger grants from either EPA, NOAA, or the Futures Fund to do soil testing. Sediment testing for a particular methodology. The question that we just read, sediment testing sounds like research. And the answer, Melissa's going to answer that, so I'll let her do it. And
I was letting you. I thought you started.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you click the button. So, so in this particular instance, they said, we want to do a marsh restoration project and coastal resiliency project with thin layer soil deposition at this one place in Alewife Cove. And in order to prove that that's a feasible technology for us and therefore become eligible for these funding sources that fund that activity, we have to do soil testing in order to show them that we have the right type of soils and that it'll actually be feasible here. So it was a feasibility grant that involved testing. And at the end of it, they would know and hopefully be eligible for that. So hopefully that answers that question, which is a good one. Good question. What's that line between research and piloting? If you're planning to publish a primary scientific research paper on it, it is not piloting tools probably. Okay. All right. And then across all of those, we have one special rule. If you're going to do $100,000 or more, we require you to reach out and talk to us about this. It's really easy conversation. Send an email, schedule. It'll probably just get on the phone call with you, hear your sort of pitch about what the idea is, just so we can make sure that you're uh, on on track. We have the number of dollars we have are not so great that we can do 10, 100,000 or $150,000 projects. And so we want to make sure people aren't wasting their time sort of coming in with this big ticket item that doesn't have a good chance at success. And oftentimes we'll ask them to sort of break down the early stages of that and maybe see whether or not through piloting or capacity building or new collaboration, we can't meet some portion of that need. Um, but mainly it's to save you the time of trying to pull that thing together without, you know, having a short conversation to see whether or not it's really a good fit. If it's a good fit and that's the name, we've never heard about it before, then go right ahead and we'll give you the thumbs up and you'll go and do it. The big key about how well it's going to be reviewed, though, is it's going to have a regional impact. So a lot of these projects in coastal resiliency and land reclamation and all these other types of things that might get funded or collaboration or new staffing, those dollar amounts can get really high really fast. And if we're going to make a big investment in that, we're going to want to see something that can have a general applicability. Either it's providing a benefit regionally from the get-go, or it's something that the region has to know or could really learn from, or it could become a model or something. So we'll discuss that on the call. But think about how is this about the whole region and not just about one spot on this particular project. So please try to do that before the end of the day, Friday, January the 10th, if you're planning to put in a large proposal. And then how will we evaluate these things? So what we're finally going to do, we'll probably, excuse me, but we'll do at the very end of after getting all these, we'll read the proposals, the narratives, we'll look at the supporting materials that you provided. And what we're going to really be looking at first is how well do you fit our priorities? Are you a clear bullseye on what we're trying to accomplish with these funds as stated in the RFP and as we've mentioned with examples here? That's going to be the big factor, right? So that's where you should spend a lot of time thinking about how you're designing and thinking about your project for this RFP. We'll ask some questions about your qualifications in the narrative area. We do not need life stories, but talk about who you are and how it might apply to that. A sentence or two at most about some of the major players and get it done. Partnerships, if it's not just your organization involved, you need to tell us a little bit about who some of the other people are. It's probably good to have letters of support from some of those organizations as well. We'll judge it on technical merit, right? The folks who are reviewing this are longtime foundation staff. We've read literally thousands and thousands, and between us, tens of thousands of proposals, and we've been funding for decades and decades. And so we have a sense about what gets what's feasible, right? And so if you say we're going to do living shorelines across 17 miles of Long Island, North Shore of Long Island in the next 12 months, we're going to say that's just not feasible, right? So that's what we mean by technical merit. And we have a question again: what percentage of applications do we typically fund? We actually get to about 33%. So that's pretty good, right? And when I was doing fundraising, I'd say, okay, what's the dollar amount that I'm asking for times the percentage chance I have of getting it. That gives me the maximum amount of time or dollar value of my time that I should spend working on this proposal. And then we'll look at the budget, and you'll notice on the budget form in there that we ask you, what is the total project cost? And then how much are you asking from us? Now, pro tip here, first is that have somebody read your proposals before you do it, because typos and run-on sentences and all these types of mistakes really knock your proposal down into the middle ranks pretty quickly. People are not excited about having to figure out what you were trying to say. And then the other one is on the budget, don't come to us with projects that say, it just happens to cost exactly the amount that I think you get, right? The maximum is 200,000. Look at this project costs exactly $200,000. The chances of that being true are very, very slim. And so tell us at least what the whole thing costs and then how much you're asking from us. It's okay to ask us for an entire project cost, but if those two numbers match and they're both exactly round, it tends to look a little fishy to us. So tell us what the costs are, that they actually are. We can tell realistic from unrealistic because we've been doing this a long time with a lot of different projects. So just put it on there and then ask for what we want. We discuss about what we pay for and what we don't in the RFP in more detail. And then we're also going to take a look at alignment, right? If you took the time to sort of say, really, this is about environmental justice and how, we want to know how well you made that argument. And because being able to do that is a leg up to the work that you're doing. So those are basically the criteria that we have, the way that we're going to review these things. We've talked in great detail about what the priorities are and how they're going to and what we're expecting from those. But it's a lot of information, and I'm happy to take questions from now until, well, let's say 30 minutes from now. We'll keep going if the questions keep coming.
I just wanted to add to, Trip was mentioning if you're engaging the community, tell us about that. So tell us about the relationships that you have, whether they're existing relationships or whether you're planning to build new relationships, because that will help in the evaluation process as well, knowing whether
Yep.
you've already connected to people. If you're also talking about a program that involves other partners, it's helpful to have those letters of support. And if you're doing something with a school or some other organization and you think you're going to need a memorandum of understanding or a contract with them, it's also helpful to know whether that's in place because that could delay a project start. So let us know where the status of that is.
All right. So the first question was, can you apply in more than one priority area? And the answer to that is yes. You can have up to 2 applications coming from your from your organization. And so they could be in the same category priority area, they could be in different priority areas, whatever you want. And again, that does not count times where you're a sub-awardee. Is it possible to talk to someone live about an idea first? Do we just send in the written form? I'm actually happy to do that. So if you want to send an email to info@lisfc.org, I will schedule a cost on that. I'll schedule a call on that. And then the next question was, what kind of costs might be covered in a grant for collaboration? Really kind of anything, right? So it's generally in collaboration. It's going to be a decent amount of personnel time is where we see most of the costs coming in, because that's the way organizations are structured. And now we're talking about sort of putting together a virtual organization of collaboration. But sometimes they'll want to go and do a meeting together. So they'll need a meeting space and some per diem. Occasionally might be printing costs, or they want to do a facilitated thing. There's lots of stuff in there. We cover a lot of different types of things. Hopefully that helps. We got a question. Another question was, can we have a single application touch on more than one priority? And my answer to that is no, right? And I would strongly advise you not to do it, right? We understand the whole world's connected and it's about capacity and stuff like that, but you got to pick one. And you really should make sure that it's really hitting that priority's key points right directly. And if you don't do that, it doesn't mean that you're not good people and that you don't have good work that you want to do. It does mean that there's a lack of clarity about what it is that you want, which is going to make your proposal fall into the middle of the pack, and at that point it won't get funded. follow up to that, could two applications both be funded? The answer is yes. We wouldn't allow you to enter two and then deny you the right to get both funded. Yeah. Okay. Can the expense budget form be created as a separate PDF so that we can edit it online before uploading it? You should. Right. So
I can
yeah,
try that. I can check with our tech team and see whether that's
yeah,
possible.
we
We'll
make
be
a
able to print it.
a form fillable version of that. Yeah, because it gets a little wonky trying to type into the form. I see that. So that's a good question. We don't know the answer. We will look into it. Um, to what extent must proposals directly impact the shore in order to be eligible? These funds direct shoreline impacts. The answer to that is no. We have a service area that goes all the way basically up to the top of Connecticut, and somewhat inward to wherever the watershed boundary is on Long Island, which I don't know that well. It does not go into Vermont and Canada and New Hampshire, even though the watershed for the Long Island Sound does go in there. But it is not the coastal boundary. It is the larger boundary that includes most of Connecticut. So projects up there are oftentimes about stream restoration work or you know, planting borders, doing testing to find out what might be possible to get a farm to reduce its runoff, initial feasibility studies around changes to stream sides. There might be a larger project around uh, it might involve a larger project around a major restoration of a section of stream, but there's initial tests that need to be done in order to qualify for that. So that's the kind of things that'll happen up further from the shore. Think about nitrogen loads, pollution, storm runoff, all that kind of stuff is covered in the comprehensive conservation and management plan. And so you should find your answers there. And then another question, so could it include the South Shore of Long Island coastal projects? So generally the South Shore is not in the service area that's shown on the website. You can look at the boundary area, and so that's not the case. And it could include some stuff inland in Long Island as long as it's on the Long Island watershed side of things. That's great. Good questions. Keep them coming. Here's one. Could a proposal that had to do with a project implementation be funding? For example, implementing a plan to address invasive plants as a means of restoring coastal habitat, even if the means weren't particularly innovative. It's possible to a certain extent. So if it's implementing a plan to address something, then it's probably not piloting. But if it's like this is the first stage and we do that so we can then, be in line to monitor it moving forward. Yeah, so you're gonna have to say it. I'm trying to think of the ways that it might fit. I'm putting on my old fundraiser's hat to try to stuff a round peg into a square hole. So but generally just raw implementation funds are not going to be there. If everything's ready to go, if it's kind of shovel ready, then the futures fund and some other funds might be a better fit for you. If you've got to get a couple of ducks in the row or get a few things done before you're shovel ready, it's going to be a better fit for us. Yeah. Could you speak a little bit more about the cross-cutting principles? Yeah, so there's verbiage in the RFP that describes what we're talking about. But let's say that you're saying we need to do we want to do that. Well, I was talking about that soil testing example that we gave. You could say, but this is in an underserved community that's a historic environmental justice community, which is available on, EPA's website and stuff like that. And so not only is it a good fit for your priority of handling piloting and projects and planning, but it's also a good fit for this environmental justice component. And it's about coastal resiliency and climate and resiliency to climate change because we're doing marsh buildup, and those are going to be important. So that's the way that you would use those things to highlight and emphasize why that priority, the project of your chosen priority fits in this RFP. So they're there so that you can say, this is an extra little added benefit that you're looking to gain with your sources. Our project does that. Not all projects have to do that, and not all projects will have even more than one of those, but some will, and that'll be a good thing to mention. Would sampling water or sediment plan be considered research? So again, if the results of the sampling are being used in order to make you eligible for future funding, then would not be considered research. But if you're just gathering it up so that you can produce a paper on it, that would be sort of pure scientific research. So is there a practical use related to the CCMP that you're collecting that water or sediment data for, right? Just because it's science doesn't mean that it's primary scientific research. So we get Federal Clean Vessel Act grants, 75% of the purchase of new pump out boats for our pump out program that services west of Long Island Sound from Bridgeport to the Bronx. Provides free waste tank pump outs for recreational boaters. Would you fund the grant proposal? We could ask the remaining 25%. So this is a program that's already in place. It's already receiving funding from government sources. It is really just the required sort of necessary match or a shortfall in your ability to cover those funds. And so it is not a good fit for any of our priorities. The way that you might go in a different direction is to say, our organization is struggling to raise additional funds in order to meet this match requirement that we have. Given that, we look to expand our fundraising activities, and so we need a capacity building grant that's going to work in the following way. So that would be a way that I would sort of approach that, because we're not interested in just sort of saying, oh, you're close, here's some money. It's a good thing, but we would have to do that year after year after year after year to solve that problem for you. But if you have a capacity building that has a reasonable chance to solve that problem for you moving forward, then that's the way that we would like to fund it. That's my 2 cents. My project might already. Do you have the contact info for the Futures Fund that you said might be a better fit? Yes, it is. Just Google NFWF, NFWF Futures Fund, and it will take you directly there. Their proposals are going to be due in May, and usually April and May, so we'll figure it out. The goal is so you have your answer from us before you go to apply to them, but we are hoping that you'll use us as a stepping stone for that activity. Great questions. Keep coming.
So while we're waiting to see if there are any other questions, I want to say that you can follow the New York Community Trust and the New York Community Trust Long Island, as well as the New York Community Trust Westchester on our social media pages. Post went up today about the Long Island Sound Stewardship Fund. So if you're looking for additional information, you can also find it there.
Yeah. And again, I don't know if we have any more questions, but I'm happy to answer emails and things like that. If we need to get into a more detailed call, we can schedule something like that. I used to be a fundraiser. I remember that feeling of like shouting into the void and hoping for something to come back. And it's hard to sort of guess. You're trying to piece together all these pieces of funding for all these different projects that your organization have going on. It's enough to send people crazy. So I understand that we're not trying to be. We're trying to be accessible and helpful, but we have to put some limitations on what we're able to fund and where we want to focus our limited dollars. So that's what we're trying to do here. My big sort of thing to make sure whatever your idea is that it doesn't fall to the center or the bottom of the stack is to sit there and say, can I make my case in a page? Just here's the basics without filling out all the detail of the RFP. Can I give a clear through line, right? Here's a problem that we have and that we want to solve. And it's related to the CCMP in the following way. And so we're going to do X, Y, and Z. That costs A, B, and C. And here's the plan that we have to get that done. And you know, if you can't, you know, have that sort of bullet pointed out and make it really clear, then, you know, it's maybe time to circle back and get some help and get some other thought on it. Because we're going to be reading lots of proposals, and ones that are sort of going around every different way and taking a long time to get to the point, just turn out not to be compelling, right? You are not going to get funded through creative use of adverbs. You're going to get funded through absolutely hitting the bullseye on what our priorities are. And so focus on what that is, and don't try to make it sound like everything to everybody. You know, and don't speak to us like we've never heard of like the value of education and why children are lovely and how, you know, photosynthesis works. We get all that. So talk to us about, we're trying to solve this problem related to the CCMP. We're going to do X, Y, and Z, and it's going to cost A, B, and C. And if you can have that basic idea set in your head, and then add on the additional information that we're asking for in the RFP, you're going to have a much stronger proposal. Any other questions from that? We'll give another minute or so for any last minute questions to come in, and then we will end this up, stop the recording, and working on getting a couple things. One, the recording out onto the internet, and two, we're going to take a look at a form fillable version of the budget PDF, so that makes it easier for people to do that. Good idea for whoever said that, by the way. All right, going once, going twice. If questions come up later, feel free to email us, and happy to answer. All righty. Well, with that, you're all free to go.
Thank you guys for your time. Hope you have a wonderful holiday. Of course, something popped up. I don't know if it's oh, it's just a thank you. Okay. We appreciate you joining us today and look forward to reviewing proposals. Like Trip said, if you have questions, feel free to reach out.
Yep. All right. Good luck, everybody. Have a happy holidays and happy new year. And we look forward to reading what you send.